part of my responsibility as an entrepreneur and as the founder and CEO is to be really okay with being uncomfortable. And that uncomfortable doesn't mean that I'm not safe. It doesn't mean that things are bad. It doesn't mean that tomorrow everything's going to shut down, even though sometimes my brain wants to go there. It's like, how can I sit in this discomfort? How can I hold this also with my team? Because it's probably also uncomfortable for them, name it for them, and be like this like, I don't know, this like steward that well.
Okay, welcome to The Boost, conversations with people promoting mental health. And I'm delighted to be here with Amy Green, who's the CEO and founder of Nashville Collaborative Counseling Center. Amy, how are you today?
Oh, good. Thanks for having me, Steve.
Oh, for sure. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. And as always, I enjoy the green room conversations ahead of time with my guests. And I want to hear a lot more about this business that you've grown tremendously. Actually, the timing is perfect because I was just doing some industry reading this weekend from Behavioral Health Business, which is a resource I really know and trust for a lot of content. And there you are, NCCC, as one of the 40 fastest growing companies. Oh, and
this came in the mail today.
Oh my goodness.
This came in the mail today too.
Good for you.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
What number are you?
I think it's 616. Okay. Fastest growing on the Inc. list. We were 56 in health services, 11 in Metro Nashville, and 13 in Tennessee. It was the first time on the list too, which is really cool. Like it's like one of those dreams. And when they were counting down, I was like, first off, the fact that this is even something I can attend to be on, like this is bananas. But then part two was we're going to be like 4,999. Like there's no way that I'm anywhere close to. And then to see like less than 1,000, I was just like, what is this life? This is crazy. So it's very humbled, very grateful.
That's amazing. I can only imagine putting myself in your shoes and some of those feelings you might have. It's like in the NFL, the last person drafted, they call Mr. Irrelevant. It'd be like number 5,000, but you are 616. You're like, top round pick.
It's crazy. I know our team, I know the work we've done, and I'm just grateful that there's things like this that allow us to be validated and recognized in the work that we've done, because it is a lot of really big, hard work some days. And the impact that we're having, I think, is what I get the most excited about, because when you get the privilege and opportunity to participate in lists like that, whether it's behavioral health business, which again, I saw that too. And I was just like, how am I even on this? Like, that's crazy. But when you have the privilege, it starts to allow us to expand conversations with others that might not have been in our network. It allows me to advocate for the business differently. It allows us to serve more people and get amazing clinicians that want to work for us. And so all of those things, it just supports and helps our business to be validated in the great work that we're already doing. But to have, some accolades behind it, and then because of those accolades, the opportunities we have from that are always incredible.
We can get tempted into trying to wag the dog by going after the list, or feeling like that's the accomplishment, is getting on the list. And it's certainly an amazing accomplishment. But it's the work you've done. And at the same time, you can compound wins. Like when I moved from California to Nashville, the Nashville market, at least that's where I worked. I Googled best company to work for in Nashville. I had no context of what I was doing. I kind of knew, maybe software was interesting. And this dynamic email marketing company popped up because they had won one of those little awards, and, turned into a great 4 or 5 years with an amazing high growth company. So it's not for nothing. People notice these accolades and things, and you can use them for good to, continue to grow your business.
That's the great responsibility I feel, right? It's like stewarding, like, because you have the privilege to participate in that kind of list or network or whatever, then how do I steward that well and make sure that what we're doing with that is really helping us to continue our mission and have an impact. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, I want to unpack this more because, I run this conference, the Mental Health Marketing Conference. You're not the only Inc. 5000 company, which is cool to say, on that's kind of in our community. There are marketing agencies and other behavioral health companies that are, again, just shooting to the moon. But our audience, this is about growth and marketing and how to improve your organization. So I would love to kind of start at the beginning. Well, let's do a couple things first, just because we always do, which is the virtual hug and the shameless plug. So the virtual hug is tell us somebody or something you're grateful for. And then the shameless plug is, why don't you tell us kind of how this got started, how and why you founded it. And then let's get into unpacking sort of what you see as some of the secrets to success, or the secret sauce that you've been building on, and the trends that you've been spotting and serving.
Yeah. So virtual hug, I just came back from Tucson. I got to spend the weekend with some new friends and old friend. And so I'm really grateful for that time. So Kath Carter is her name. She just retired from her role at EY. She was, for lack of better terms, because I would butcher her title, a pretty damn big deal at EY. I think I've had the privilege and opportunity to know her since 2019, and she has been on stage in Nashville giving me one of my Emerging Entrepreneur Awards. We got to go to EY, and I think that she's really been a huge part of my story for like the winning women in that circle there. I think a lot of the opportunities, and this is what I was sharing with her this week, and a lot of the opportunities I have on the table, especially with a more national network, are because of her, and I'm really grateful for that. So much of what the Winning Women program has done for me with EY is allow me to have access to networks that I otherwise wouldn't have. I don't even know where I would have found a lot of those people in my life. I'm from Buffalo, New York, and went to University of Buffalo. I'm from very public school background in that regard, and Tennessee Tech down here in Nashville, outside of Nashville. And so, like, my dad and my mom are great people, but their network isn't full of folks who are entrepreneurs like myself, or would have been able to advise me along the way as I grew and scaled my business. And so, as I've grown and scaled my business. And so I think just, again, like just a lot of humility and gratitude to be able to be friends with her, to be able to be in her circle, and to be going to Tucson, invited on a girls trip, and getting some restoration so I can come back and keep doing what I'm doing. So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah. That's great. I only looked over, my phone was ringing. I forgot to mute it. Sorry about that.
You're good. I don't care.
So we'll get to the shameless plug, but tell me, just because the shameless plug, that's another question later. Do you have any dogs, and how shameless are they? No, I want to ask about advice, like seeking advice. I came from modest means as well, and I'm probably light years behind you in terms of some of the metrics that you could point to. On the other hand, we're in similar shoes in that high growth organizations that you're not maybe tapped into the network from your family or what have you. So go into that a little bit more. Are you just brazen and open and aggressive about pursuing advice, or do you have any hesitation, or did you ever have any hesitation about sort of uncovering the warts of your business? Like, go into some of those feelings. How do you approach it?
Yeah, I think one of the most beautiful things is just, and I started like a LinkedIn series on just like mentorship Mondays, because I've had some incredible people who have just like come into my life and spoken truth, big hard truth, whether, great truth, but big and hard sometimes. But people that I really trusted and really respected and really admired. And I've been very grateful that along the way I've had these, and I don't know if it's just luck or if it's a reflection of just where I am in life. I genuinely don't know why these people entered my life when they did, but it's just this like divine serendipitous timing that when they show up is when I need them. And they have what I need, and it's been beautiful. And so I think what I've had to come to terms with is just trusting that I can, um, for lack of better terms, bear all, that I can be very transparent about the good, the hard, the ugly, and that I'll be met in that with compassion, kindness, and then some like wicked solid advice, right? Like people who are not scared to tell me the truth or to tell me the hard, and trust that I can handle it. And then it's my job again to steward and to take that and integrate it and walk it forward. There's been people along the way that have offered me advice that I wouldn't consider part of like in Brene Brown, like the arena, like those that are doing the work with me. And I'm always happy to listen to the million pitch decks. God, fucking pitch decks. Am I allowed to say that here? Sorry.
You are now. And you were before.
Oh my God. Pitch decks are like the bane of my existence. I'm probably on number like the iteration since last October. It's like, probably 999 or something, because the copious amounts of feedback that people will give you along the way. And a lot of it's like their preferences. And I've had to learn. Initially, I was just editing for every single person based on the feedback they were giving me. I'm like, this isn't helpful. This isn't constructive. Every time I'm changing it, it's making me change my pitch every time. And there's some things in that are helpful, but not everybody deserves to give me feedback in that way. Or the feedback that's given might be personalized to what that person needs, but isn't applicable to the next pitch that I do. And so I've had to become a bit more decisive and intentional about like, what feedback do I take forth with me, and what feedback do I integrate and consider and just set to the side. And maybe it's necessary someday, but it might not be necessary now.
So when the student is ready, the teacher appears is something that you're
a great way to put it.
Maybe relying on. And I believe in that too strongly. And also there are a lot of other people who appear. So it's the signal and the noise problem. But when we're ready, it does seem like life opens up and says, okay, you're ready for this next, you're hitting your head on this wall because there's a step up you need to take. And oftentimes if you're open to it, I find incredibly valuable lessons.
Valuable lessons.
My neighbor across the street is this 94-year-old guy. Like, I just sit and take notes in my phone from the gems he drops, and he doesn't even know it. He's just watching Wheel of Fortune, like giving me business consulting advice. No, I'm sure he knows it. He just wants me to be comfortable. Okay, but then there's serendipity along the way, and then people who can shoot straight with you and give you really honest, hard truths that may be hard in the moment, and then later on probably save you a lot of pain. Oftentimes,
but Steve, hard doesn't necessarily right. I mean, I think so much of entrepreneurship is just being uncomfortable, right?
Yes.
And how do we tolerate discomfort? And so it's not that hard is bad. And it's never like, and I think that that's just part of who I've been my whole life is like, I've always been open to feedback. I'm a huge learner. Like every situation that I walk into, I try very hard to remain humble in that, like, I don't know a lot. So how can I, from this situation or from this person, receive the most, and just be very curious about what this person has to offer, because every interaction I have has something to offer. And I think when I approach things that way, I've received a lot of just these wisdoms and nuggets and little pieces. And again, Steve, to your point, like there's definitely people where I'm like, oh my God, like I could sit here for an hour and have an entire book written based on just the little nuggets that are dropped every other second. But it's been really beautiful to be in the hard and know that hard doesn't mean that it's bad. Hard just means that there's probably something that I'm working through here that's going to take us to level up or to whatever. And that part of my responsibility as an entrepreneur and as the founder and CEO is to be really okay with being uncomfortable. And that uncomfortable doesn't mean that I'm not safe. It doesn't mean that things are bad. It doesn't mean that tomorrow everything's going to shut down, even though sometimes my brain wants to go there. It's like, how can I sit in this discomfort? How can I hold this also with my team? Because it's probably also uncomfortable for them, name it for them, and be like this like, I don't know, this like steward that well, hold it well. Because changing the discomfort doesn't allow us to grow. When we're not uncomfortable, we don't grow. And um, I haven't really equated comfort in my life to, I don't know. Again, I'm probably an entrepreneur for a reason, but like when I'm comfortable, I'm bored probably. And I want to be challenged. I want to grow. I want to learn. I want to create. And all of that comes with discomfort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Earlier, you didn't say the good, the bad, and the ugly. You said the good, the hard, and the ugly. And I thought
Mm-hmm.
that's a fascinating perspective. And when you said entrepreneurialism is learning how to sit in discomfort, I jumped inside and said yes with such excitement because I'm learning that lesson. Like not today, but last Monday, I was sitting on my couch in such discomfort mentally, and I did have some kind of breakthrough realization to say, "Oh, this is what it's supposed to be. Like this is yes, the resistance is the way, and then
It's part
not
of the
only
journey.
not only that, but it's the direction you should be going. The resistance and the pain tells you sometimes, oh, this is the right way. Now, um, you don't want to break your arm while you're lifting weights. Like there's something to be said about like
The
there are
tension.
there are degrees of this, and are you ready? Because it has a lot to do with change management. And I love what you said about bringing your team along and naming it for them, because there's this funny old movie, The Princess Bride, and the guy says,
It's a good movie.
the guy says, pain, life is pain. Anybody who tells you different is selling you something. And
Yep.
I think
Yep.
about all the time when I get sold stuff. um, and it's not like a masochistic type of pain, but it is to say, hey, look at the way that all things grow, and the acorn that falls on the ground and just sits there in comfort is just a squirrel meal. But you crack open, you get in the mud, and not to extend the analogy too much, but the metaphor, but it's like big things can happen once you crack open and say, yes, I'm moving forward toward whatever this driver is in my life, or this inevitability of what I feel like I need to do based on my dreams and my goals and visions. So I'm right there with you. I mean, water skiing behind you definitely, but like I'm in, enjoying being pulled along.
There's no comparison. I mean, I think, and I think too, like, if you want to grow and scale your business, then you have to be okay with discomfort, right? And the hard and of that. If your business is really good where it is, then get comfortable and live in that. There's still going to be challenges in that too, because people will leave and things will not work, or somebody's going to
Yeah.
be unsatisfied, sure. But the challenges of that comfort are just different. And if you really do want to grow and scale a business, and this is again, like I think I was built for that. I think my life experiences and I don't know, whatever I've gone through in my life have given me this resilience to lean into discomfort and have the coping skills to do that. And then grow in my coping skills, because there's definitely some that, again, along the way, I'm like, whoo, don't have the skill set for that yet. So how do I go to a mentor or a therapist or a teacher and get resource so that I can show up in this space in a good way, an integrated way? Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I mean, I, I found every time like you do level up to the next season, there's something else that's required of you. And part of my role again and responsibility is how do I do my own self reflection to understand, am I the right person for this stage of the company? Do I have the resources to take it to the next level? And if I don't, can I get resourced? And if I can't, then who? Right. And so far, somehow I've grown, I've grown with it. Um, Michael Burcham's one of my dear mentors, and he told me like day one when I took his class at the Nashville Entrepreneur Center called Catalyst. Um, he told me day one, your company your company's growth cannot outpace yours. And if your company's growth is outpacing your growth, you're screwed.
Yeah.
And I fully believe it. I mean, I fully believe it. So a lot of self-reflection, a lot of like doing my own internal work, which again, our weekends, why like that weekend at Tucson, so necessary for me, because it's like a pause to then be like, okay, what are the things that I'm internalizing right now? What are the things I'm struggling with right now? What are the things that are needed from me right now? And how am I resourced to do that, or where am I not? And just getting really honest with myself about it. If we don't take time away from the businesses, then we're just in this constant responsiveness to the needs of the business, and we haven't really had time to reflect on ourselves, and how we show up, especially as founders and CEOs, has a huge impact.
That is so insightful. How culture comes from the top, and it's certainly influenced from, not that it's a hierarchy, but just in terms of, company structure. There's almost always an apex kind of, there's always a pinnacle. There's always a CEO almost. There's certainly decentralized businesses and models and things, but it seems like those even eventually model up. And so to your point about, you have I'm deep in thought here. You have a structure for where am I at in this growth cycle? Do I have the resources now, or can I go find them to continue to keep pace with this other entity, this corporation? Comes from the word body, like this. It's almost like another entity or person takes on a life of its own. They say, it's like, oh, it's like my baby, my company's my baby, like all these different analogies that tell us like, no, it's not actually a human, but it sure walks and talks like one sometimes. And so how are we as people keeping pace with this other thing that has its own life out in the world?
And dropping my ego to say, I might not be the right person for a $50 million company, right? Like and we're not there yet. We will be there someday. Yeah. But at 50 million, am I the right person to take that to the next place? Or if growth is still the goal, or do I need to let my ego go, take a step back, figure out what it is I do really well? Maybe it's doing a startup and scaling to a certain level, and just keep that on repeat and make that what I do really well. And I think that, and I've tried really hard to share that with our team, is just like, it's not for like who's in the role and what's the title and what's the power that comes with it and what's the ego that comes with that. It's like, who's going to be the right skill set to steward this well at this point in stage. And I think we can get caught up in titles. We can get caught up in roles and responsibilities. We can get caught up in the decision making and the power of that and who's making the decisions and all those things. But I mean, if I have to be really honest, I'm probably not the right person to run a $50 million or $100 million company. I don't have an MBA. I've never done that before. And there's some incredible women that I was with this weekend that like are at billion-dollar companies, and they do it really well. And they've done that their whole career for 30 years, and they know the change management. They know how to take it to the next level. They know what to do. And when I drop all of my own ego and say, okay, so if it's really about the mission, which is to create greater access to care, women's mental health, then how can I make sure that that is what's held at the center at all times? It's not about Amy. It's not about, Amy being the CEO at all different stages and all different levels. It's how do we make sure that we have the greatest impact on women's mental health and access to care through the life existence of this company?
Yeah.
And
question. Yeah.
It is a big question.
But that is such humility too. I mean, there's two basic like kind of Greek mythologies that always come to mind, and one is like flying into the sun, and the and the other one is the phoenix rising, and it both has to do with one, our capacity for growth and our capacity to take new heights, and then also the importance of keeping our feet on the ground while we do those things, not getting conflated. I'm definitely, as far as I know, not somebody who should be running $100 million company. Right now.
I don't, Steve, I'm like, I made $30,000 6 years ago as a social worker. Like, who am I to run? I
Who
mean,
who
even
are you?
who am I? When
That's the
even we
thing.
got to like 1 million, I was like, what?
Yeah.
What is
Yeah.
this? And so, I mean, yeah, like, but what is the skill set that's needed there? And what's a skill set that's needed to run a huge Vanderbilt hospital, right? Like, I mean, and there's people who have studied their entire careers to do that so well and are very effective at it. And again, I just think about like if I'm really dedicated to the mission and that's really what this is about at the end of the day, then I have to get out of the way of that at some point too and be very reflective and aware of where I end and where something else begins. And
Mm-hmm.
that just takes it to the next I don't know, evolution of what it becomes. And that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing and quite possibly a natural thing. Something in the code, for again how things grow, and even like how things grow in fractions. Like if you look at a tiny little sliver of a broccoli, it looks like the whole head of it looks like the whole plant because it grows in the same kind of way, just at exponential or logarithmic patterns. Leaves look like the shapes of their trees oftentimes. I call myself a 1 to 10 person, so I'm not an inventor, but I can see great ideas in the rough. I can see diamonds in the rough, and I can see that taking something 10x is so incredibly easy for me compared to other things that I could do, because you're still so under the radar. Going from 1 million to $10 million, like you said, you've got friends running $1 billion organizations, which are levels and scales above what I would ever
That's
dream to
crazy.
do. Yeah, it's
Yes. Oh
it's
my
wild.
God. That's crazy.
At the same time, I would bet a fair amount of money on the power of compounding your experience and your attitude with where you want to take things, and saying, oh, I would probably bet on the potential that Amy could level up her resources and skills even more than she could ever dream. But that's not to say that's the way. Like, my mission is, and we had a burn it down moment, 2020, running a conference.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, let's give away tickets and just rely on a few gracious, great, generous sponsors,
Yeah.
and then 21, I buy the conference and turn it off completely for a year. It's like, what a great business person I am, buy an asset and then turn it off. But, 22, 23, 24, wonderful growth, and so, and we want to do it again next year. And there's iterations to that, but just things can compound incredibly beyond our
They can.
imagination.
Yeah. And the right people in the right seats also makes a big difference too.
Totally. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. A rule or lesson I'm learning this year is don't do it, Steve, which means you finally have some really smart people around you doing great work day in and day out. Like, don't touch it. Like, don't do the graphic design, because they do it way better,
Nope.
Don't do it. Well, let's shift real quick, because we've buried the lead here. Tell people about NCCC. Give us your shameless plug. I know. Well, you tell us.
You're good. So Nashville Collaborative Counseling Center started in 2019, and we had a focus on women's mental health care and trauma and greater access to care. So those pieces were the core of how we then scaled and grew. In the Tennessee and Nashville community in particular, I think that there was just this very unmet need for access to care, meaning we take insurance and we're a network, mixed with a focus on women's mental health and trauma. And so we just blew up. I mean, we did 386 in revenue the first year. By year 3, we were doing 3.2 million. And it was just a wild ride, trying to, initially, we were just hiring because we couldn't keep the pace with the number of clients that we had requests in. Learned very quickly that you have to set your growth and you have to pace your growth. And so we made decisions around how many hires we could sustain and support, what is sustainable feel like. Sustainable also still is discomfort, because we're still growing and stretching. what are the processes and the systems in place that are going to support us when we have a team of 17 to when we have a team of 50? And those things adapt and change along the way. So we found with COVID that we became more generalized. And that was, I think, just this like beautiful moment of learning as well. It's such a beautiful opportunity because when we serve mom, we found mom makes 80% of the medical decisions for her family and herself. And so she's serving this whole ecosystem around her that her kids were struggling because they couldn't see their friends and they needed support. So who can help them? Husband and wife are struggling. Or partner and wife are struggling. Who can help them? Maybe their friends down the street or their church mates are struggling too. And so we became this like ecosystem of referrals for all the people that mom loves and supports in her life. She's like, hey, through word of mouth, we had a strong reputation. Come here. This is my place. I trust my therapist. They've done a great job and they take insurance. That I think mixed with a really incredible culture that we've grown and developed. And I say we very intentionally because our team, my leadership team and myself have really grown and developed that. They all show up in some incredibly trauma-informed ways, really allowing people to be human, to be very real. One of the things that I advocate for and feel very fierce about in my life is that I don't need to apologize for who I am in the world. And if I cause harm, if I am causing someone pain, absolutely accountable to that. However, who I am is okay in the world, and there's permission and space for me to be myself. One of my team members, Marley, she's one of our leadership over clinical. She and I had this conversation one day when I was at the office early on. I had gotten off the phone with insurance companies because I was still wearing my billing hat. I didn't have billing people yet. And I really should not be doing that role because
this is my billing hat, actually.
Oh my God. They make me irate. Insurance companies make me irate. And the conversations I had would just make me livid. I don't have patience for that. So I got off the phone. I was really frustrated. And I was like throwing papers in the garbage really loud. And I was just walking around the office, probably swearing and other things. Who knows? And thought I was alone, was not alone. Marley was there. And Marley walks up to me and I was like, I am so sorry. I'm so embarrassed. I thought I was by myself and here I am acting a fool and you've heard it. And she's like, no, when you're fully you, you give me permission to be fully me. And it stuck with me. And it's been one of those like core kind of frameworks that I think best encompasses how I want and the culture I want to invite everybody here to have is you be fully you and I will be fully me. And then we'll meet halfway. And if there's something that I've done that doesn't feel good or is uncomfortable or has caused harm, I'm accountable for that, but I'm going to be fully me and you be fully you. And it's just been beautiful to witness and watch that and how that's grown and scaled because there's this deep just vulnerability, but also authenticity that our team members have with each other. And I think that goes a long way. There's been some leadership moments in my life. I think I wrote about it on LinkedIn last week. There was one leader in particular that I worked when I moved to Tennessee. I was at a very large behavioral healthcare company. And I had walked in there one day in the middle of a miscarriage and I had taken a day of PTO and only had 3 left or something like that. And I wasn't feeling good. I was in a lot of pain. I was really uncomfortable physically. And then emotionally was just gutted. And, I walked in and one of my supervisors that I had talked to that day said, you leave that at home, work is work. Right. And I was just like, oh, and I told my partner, Isaac, at the time, I was just like, what a privilege it must be to just be able to drop things and leave them at home. I literally physically can't leave this at home right now. I would love to do that. And I literally can't. And there's this very toxic mentality that we have to separate ourselves somehow and not be our whole selves. And then come into this workplace as like half of ourselves. And that like, I put on this like different person somehow here, but when I'm at home, I'm this person. And that just to me feels so inauthentic and so exhausting. Exhausting is the best word. So you have to split myself into who I am and that there's this expectation that like, and there's this performance that I have to put face on here. And I get it. I'm not nixing, like, I'm not willing to do what's needed to assimilate into a space or that I'm not willing to be respectful towards other people's cultures or values. It's, how can I make sure that in being in assimilating that I'm fully still myself and honoring myself in that. And I just didn't feel that in that place. And it was so sad because I think I ended up leaving like three or 4 months later from that job. Um, and yeah, I mean, I want to lead differently. I want to create a space where we can all be ourselves because we deserve that.
Hmm.
And through COVID,
Tremendous.
how could you not, right? Like you couldn't split yourself. And so I think we had this really beautiful opportunity to practice then how to lead in that way.
Right. It's a force function of the antidote to disintegration. When you're disintegrated from yourself, we can visualize what disintegration looks like. It's just, you know, things blow up, things, uh, turn into little particles and disappear. Um, and that's almost impossible to hold that kind of energy or force when you're being forced or told to disintegrate from who you are. And there is a
Yeah.
balance, there, like you said, there's a third way of, there's also incentives and structures and systems within a company that um, seem like there's plenty of room for somebody going through a really difficult time like that to um, get the help they need and the time they need to be incredibly net positive over the mid or long term horizon, but
Steve,
probably
also,
not
like,
that day.
I think one of the things I think about too is like, who's to say also that I can't still show up and kick ass and take names that day, right? Like, that might be my best coping is to do that. I also just need to be held and for someone to just validate, like, I'm going through something really hard,
Yeah.
right? Like, it doesn't mean that I'm not accountable anymore, or that somehow my job responsibilities are just like washed out the window. That's not true.
Yeah.
It's just like I'm a human and I'm going through something, and this is my work family, this is my work life, and this is where, frankly, I spend 8 copious plus hours a day away from my family. I do more time here than I do with my family, and so, like, how are we showing up here? Um, Knowing that like life happens and it's going to continue to happen and we deserve to be held in all of that in a different way. I don't know.
Yeah. 100%. You're fascinating to talk to and insightful. So
Thank you.
insightful. Yeah. No, I'm really enjoying it. You you said you went generalist, but you also saw a niche in BIPOC and LGBTQIA service and care. Um, you know, where have you on the quadrant niched down? Um, of course, there's the business saying niches get riches, but there's also what you said about the core, kind of the chief mom officer, as they say in healthcare marketing,
True, true story. True
and
story.
it's like this is the chief medical officer is the mom oftentimes. So how do you balance like focus and breadth of service?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think the more that we got further away from it, the more challenges arose for our business. And in 2022, I got pregnant with my youngest. We struggled with a couple losses and some secondary infertility during COVID in between my oldest and my youngest. So my oldest is 8. Her name's Kinley. My youngest is Quinn. She's 2. And I had a bleeding episode with Quinn, and it was really scary. And there was Isaac picked me up from the hospital. We went home, and I sat on my couch and I was talking with him, and I was just like, like, if everything blew up tomorrow, like what am I doing with my everyday that is meaningful, significant, and if something is taking me away from my kids, then it's better be damn well worth it. Like if I'm spending 8+ hours a day away from these girls, what can I truly say I've had an impact on, that I've left a legacy on, that I've done something different with, and what is it that's in my skill set that I can do really well and have an impact with and steward well? And I kept coming back to like women's mental health. And so I didn't want to mess with Nashville Collaborative Counseling Center because we have such a beautiful team there. And I didn't want to shift anyone's focus there, especially because the need still was there. It was COVID still. We were still living through like whatever that season was. So I took the women's mental health asset out of it, and I created a subsidiary called Mamaya Health. And that has been how I've kind of shifted my focus and my intention to get really specific and niched. I know women's mental health. I'm trained in women's mental health. I know trauma work. I've had my own losses. It's really something I'm passionate about. And I know that we don't have an asset like that nationwide that supports women differently. The way that I've talked about it recently is like from menstruation to menopause, we go through so many biopsychosocial changes, so many life transitions, right? That as women, we deserve a different type of mental health care, frankly. And so I'm really dedicated to creating that solution. So I've been walking for both of these companies kind of simultaneously now. And it's been its own beautiful journey and challenging journey too.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's also encouraging for somebody like me and probably lots of people out there who may have more initiatives than one. There's lots of clinicians with side hustles, and there are lots of marketing agencies trying to productize, different things. And for me, it feels sometimes like I'm trying to say the world is not enough. Like, well, I'm just going to keep building new things and, or spinning off a new venture or something like that. And so for somebody who, sits with Burcham, somebody like Burcham, who you're absolutely living out a post he wrote about on LinkedIn the other day on grit, and not just resilience, but grit.
I got to see him that weekend when he was talking with me about it. It was so fun. He's like, you need to see what I just wrote. It's literally the same thing. And I was like, well, that's crazy. Oh, it was such a good post.
It was so good. And I was thinking early on, I was like, oh, I bet she's read this. And it's like, no, it's you. It's you. But
I don't think it's me, but I think it's definitely he and I had a conversation about like, you have to be resilient and gritty, right? And like, you can't, one or the other won't serve. As if entrepreneurship is really the journey you want to walk, you have to have both. You got to be willing to like get in the trenches, do the hard work. I talk about it with my kids, like, we're not going to be above cleaning a toilet if we need to clean a toilet. Like, we're going to go clean the toilet. Or my daughter, we have a farm that we got last year, and we've been doing some flower farming, like small scale flower farming. And she did her first little event last weekend at our friend's shop called Color in West Nashville, Belmead. And her and her little cousin were so cute. It's Kinley and Addison's Flower Barn. They were walking around the shop and they were, talking to people like, hi, my name's Kinley. Do you like flowers? We have flowers that go really nice with faces. She's doing all this stuff and she's learning it, which is so cool, but so frustrated, little sweet 8-year-old at not having her first sale, or the first sale going too slow, or there's not like a line out the door. And I'm like, buddy, you gotta be patient. It takes time to develop your brand. It takes time to develop your business. These people don't know us yet. We're still growing and scaling. Like, that's part of it. And so you can't be above doing the most basic things that keep your company going. I had oh my God, it's making me think of another sweet, sweet little kid I worked with. I did residential at Monroe Harding for a while. And I would drive some of the kids. There's a Subway shop around the corner, and they would employ some of our kids from our residential program. And this one kid, he came out the one day and he's like, Miss Amy, I'm not going back to work there. And I was like, why not? And he goes, because they made me clean the toilets. And I was like, do you know how many toilets I've cleaned in my life at jobs? Like, I worked at Starbucks. I worked at Longhorns as a bartender and server. Like, get used to it. Like, nobody's above cleaning a toilet. I cleaned your guys' toilets in your cottages because you can't get your stuff clean. Like, come on. Like, the grit is part of it. And part of the grit is also just like the humility to just be like, okay, like, I'm going to be the scheduler today because we need the scheduling help. I'm going to be the biller today because I need billing help. It's like, I'm the CEO. Sure. Great. Again, whatever the title is, but the title doesn't mean that I don't get into it and get the work done and get into the trenches and continue to help support and scale my team. So yeah, there's a lot there. Grit and resilience.
There's a lot there. I wrote a post this weekend about showing up, and there's a great book, Do the Work by Stephen Pressfield.
I haven't read that. I'll have to write it down.
It's great. My favorite by Pressfield is The War of Art.
Yes.
Okay, that's a great one. But he does do the work, and he talks about showing up, and there's some magic to that. There's some magic to just being there, even if you're not in your best space, and that takes quite a bit of agency and clarity and probably insight. I referenced Cal Ripken Jr., who's this baseball player who played 2,600 straight games.
That's
And
insane.
part of that is like, well, if you have enough baseball players, somebody won't miss a game. Somebody will blow out their knee the first day, and it's just kind of a
Yep.
bell curve
By luck.
distribution.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
but that's very impressive to
Oh,
go,
yeah.
beat everybody else in the whole world for how many baseball games you've showed up for in a row. And so there's something to be said there for, like they say, effort beats talent every time. And it's like, well, yes, but effort and talent beats effort every time, so, but talent
Well, and
doesn't
so
have to
like,
be intrinsic. Talent can be
not at
like
all.
what you said, where it's like, go get the resources. You have the awareness to say, I may need more resources in order to continue to grow. How do I go get those? I need a coach. And then you look at these talented
Mhm.
people, and yes, there's some talent involved, and there's also learning and growth that happens.
And part of resilience too for me is like what are the foundational things that for Amy I have to do and I have to take care of every single day so that I can show up as my best self, right?
Mm.
And there's days where I'm not my best self because I haven't done those things. And so then it's how am I telling my team, hey, actually my plane was very late last night. I'm very tired right now. And so just know that for today, right? Like this is just part of what I'm bringing to the table today. But for me, what are the things in the core competencies that I have to be really strategic about, rhythmic about, non-negotiable about in my schedule, with my time, and my energy? It's like if eating, water, movement, like these basic things, sleep, sleep like that.
Yeah, social
Like what are those
connection. Yeah.
basic social connection, right? What are these basic things that keep me to be this like really well-rounded leader and human in this world? That if those things were not on the table, again, I'm compromised. And then how do I instill that kind of awareness within my leadership team, top down, et cetera, for, hierarchy, whatever, so that we can all show up and be our best selves. We do every Monday. We started with a coach last year, Jennifer Fraught, and she's just an incredible coach, but she gave us this framework that we've used all year. And it's on Mondays, we have a weekly meeting and then daily check-ins. And the daily check-ins go a lot quicker. The weekly meeting's like an hour and a half. And we talk about like personal high, personal low, business high, business low. And so it gives us a space to connect around that, but also to name those things. So if somebody is going through something, we can talk and name about it. And we do that in daily. We do, again, a high and a low. And we can just bring ourselves to the space. Again, I can't express enough how important that feels to me is why we've been successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's part of what I see as again, if I think about things in kind of a quadrant or matrix, but like care for ourselves and care for our community around us.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how are you going to square either of those without both of them? Because you can care for people all day long and carry the cares of the world all day long, and unless there's some kind of like supernatural intervention, you will burn out. At the same time, we can have so much self-care that it turns into just selfishness, and we can also realize there's a wonderful world to help and serve around us. And I feel like I'm just so lucky to talk with you today.
I feel the same way. I'm so
Oh
grateful to
gosh,
get to know you more.
yeah, me too. It's so fun
Your
to do.
reputation far precedes you because I've heard about you many different times, and I've been aware of your conference also since like 2020. So, very, very grateful to be able to connect with you and be in your space now, in your circles.
Love it. It's one of the best things. We're nearing 50 episodes. I might make this episode 50 if we can. This is a special one. So I've never done this before. I usually ask like what book you're reading, but if somebody's listening this far in, good for them. They're very smart and they're lifelong learners and they're going to come away with a lot. But what would you recommend to somebody listening right now based on what we've talked about? Maybe a resource, Michael Burcham, anybody like a podcast. What would you recommend to them?
So Michael's course was taken over by Matt Charette, who's also an incredible Nashville entrepreneur. If you don't know him, you should. The Nashville Entrepreneur Center has probably been one of the biggest places that I've landed. I don't have an MBA. I mean, again, like to be as successful as I've been in this, I've had to resource myself over and over and over again with just a lot of learning. And that feels like one, again, a core tenet of who I am, but it's also something I've really sought out. The Nashville Entrepreneur Center has some incredible programs, whether it's Project Healthcare, which is focused on healthcare businesses that are trying to grow and scale, or Catalyst, which Matt Charette now leads, and has been heavily influenced by Michael Burcham over the years as he led it in the past. And it's just like it's like, I call it like an MBA 101 for us baby entrepreneurs who don't have MBAs. And it gave me the framework to really start to think about what are the things I need to look at in my business so that I understand the health of my business and how to run it and steward it better. I think for those who own mental health practices, there's incredible organizations like the Group Practice Exchange, Mindset Partners, Casey Compton up in Kentucky. That chick is like wicked smart at just growing, not just mental health business, all businesses. But I think when I've talked with her in the past, I've been really deeply impressed, and I've always walked away with many different things that I can strategically do today or tomorrow or next week to be impactful in my business. And so those would be the resources that, like, if somebody said tomorrow, like, what do I need to do to be a business leader in mental health? It's like, get your ass in Catalyst, right? Go sign up, get involved in the National Entrepreneur Center, sign up for anything and everything that they have that you qualify for, because it's necessary and needed. Your business cannot grow faster than you, right? So your business knowledge cannot grow faster than you.
Great.
And then I think, again, and if it's specific to mental health, it's like the Group Practice Exchange, their content materials, it's absolutely worth the $69 or whatever it is per month. But then the podcasts are incredible too. And then Casey Compton's whole network in Kentucky, Mindset Partners, you can get consulting with her team. And those hours, again, have been just invaluable.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, there's some things in there for me to look up too. Well, Amy, thank you so very much for being on the show. It is a pleasure to talk with you.
I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for your time. I look forward to getting to know you more too.
Likewise. See ya.